Golf Channel's Todd Lewis and Taylor Zarzour, host of The Starter, weekdays on SiriusXM PGA Tour Radio. And Taylor, I want to start with you. It's Wyndham week. You've been going to this tournament for a really long time. One look at the field would suggest that this is a tournament that's actually benefiting from this new setup on the PGA Tour, with some events elevated and some non-elevated.
There's no question. You think the top 70 in the world, or top 70 on the PGA Tour, rather, are playing or trying to make it into the playoffs. And then you've got guys like Adam Scott, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, Billy Horschel that are all outside the top 70. Some of those guys traditionally wouldn't play in the Wyndham Championship, and they are this year. So without a doubt, this has significantly improved the field at the Wyndham Championship. You could argue it's the best field they ever had. Clearly, they know it's a T. Lou home game this week. Todd Lewis is in Greensboro, and all the stars are shining.
Well, I want to get to that, T. Lou. I probably imagine you feel this week like I do during Riviera Week or a U.S. Open at the Los Angeles Country Club. What's it like for you to see this tournament evolve?
Well, it's been great. I mean, when it originally came out on the schedule, the Wyndham Championship seemed to be in a tough spot because it was the last tournament up against the playoffs. A lot of the stars were, you think we're going to play here. But we've had Tiger Woods play here. We've had a number of other stars play in this event. And now, as Taylor was mentioning, with the fact that only 70 are making the playoffs, there are far bigger names that are going to have to play this event if they were to play the FedEx Cup playoffs. It's a great Donald Ross golf course. It's got a lot of history with Sam Snead. It's one of the oldest golf tournaments on the PGA Tour. The community supports it. Charities get involved, and they benefit from it as well. So this is obviously, it's dear to my heart, but this is one of the premier tournaments, in my opinion, on tour.
Well, T. Lou, what's at stake for Justin Thomas this week, trying to get into said playoffs, trying to do something to get the attention of Zach Johnson? What's at stake for him this week?
You know, I was sitting actually in that chair a couple of weeks ago, and I was sitting with
play well and play.
Sorry, I'll finish up what I was saying there. And I was sitting there with Eamon. We were talking about Justin Thomas, and I said, I'm not worried about Justin. He's too talented. He's going to be able to fight through it. Well, now I'm worried about him. I think it's in his head. He's been an accomplished junior player. He's been an accomplished amateur, accomplished collegiate player. Now, maybe for the first time in his life, he's going through a professional valley, and he's having to mentally deal with this. I think he's pressing a bit. And if he could show up here at the Wyndham Championship and play with zero expectations and 100% confidence, I think he's going to be okay. By the way, his very first PGA Tour event was this tournament, the Wyndham Championship. He got in as a 16-year-old when he won a junior tournament. And in his first round, he shot a 65. He shot that number because he didn't really have a lot of expectations. He didn't really care. If he could have that same teenage mentality, I think he's going to do okay, but we're just going to have to wait and see.
Taylor, it's a tough thing for JT to make the playoffs this week, but the decision on the Ryder Cup is in someone else's hands. If you're betting now, is he on that plane to Rome?
No, well, he's on the plane because he'll be an assistant captain or something like that if he doesn't make it into the top 70 in the FedEx Cup standings. I don't know how, Eamon, you could put him on the team. If he's not going to play in these next three events, then he's not going to be able to show Zach Johnson that he's gaining on it. But based off of what Todd just said, I think if he finishes in the top 15, maybe top 12, it depends on how some of these other guys between 60 and 75 play this week. But if he finishes in the top 12 and he puts himself into the playoffs and then shows that he gains on it, continues that momentum in Memphis, then I think Zach Johnson wants to put him on the team. He wants to have a reason to put him on the team. But make no mistake, he'll be on the plane. He'll be helping Jordan Spieth and Ricky Fowler get ready for their matches, though, if he doesn't play well this week.
Taylor, I want to jump back to last week. Jay Monahan released a memo to players late night Wednesday talking about various issues related to this deal with the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, how live players might potentially be recycled onto the PGA Tour. What was your reaction to that? I felt as though it sounded as though Jay Monahan was trying to buy himself time. There weren't a lot of specifics to offer players right now, but he's promising that there's something out there that he just can't quite tell them what it is yet.
It felt kind of like the article that you published in Golf Week, that he was trying to buy some trust or gain some trust, I guess I should say, from the PGA Tour players. And you certainly can understand that, given how tumultuous the 2023 calendar year has been for Jay and has been for the PGA Tour. At the end of the day, Eamon, I think it's going to be incredibly challenging for the PGA Tour to penalize LIV players when they're entering into an agreement, a new partnership with LIV and with the DP World Tour and with the Public Investment Fund. If this is all going to shake out where they're all playing under the same partnership, I don't know how you could penalize the players that went to LIV. At the end of the day, I think that's going to be extremely challenging to do. But I think there's no question that that memo's purpose was to try to say, guys, I've got this under control. I'm fighting for you. I want you to be able to believe in me again. That felt like what the purpose of that memo was.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that. That's the mission statement right now for Jay Monahan and the PGA Tour, because there are still, I would say, maybe a large majority of players that feel that they can't trust the executives, specifically Jay Monahan, in regards to what happened with the announcement of this framework agreement with the Saudis. They felt, some of them still feel betrayed, and some of them have been open and talking about it. Not every one of them, but I think it has gone from a boiling point to a simmer. And right now, the main objective for the tour at Monahan is to gain the trust, get in front of individual players, not in large groups, in small groups, maybe one-on-ones, and say, look, we're working for you. I think all of them feel like his heart is in the right place. They just want to be included in the conversation.
It may be a simmer now, Taylor, but it seems like at any moment it can bubble over. Phil Mickelson, of course, went on social media saying that I can guarantee no LIV player wants to even play on the PGA Tour. I mean, what a colossal waste of time. Not a single player on LIV wants to play PGA Tour. It will require a public apology and restitution to LIV players for paying millions to clout media to disparage all of us. A better topic is future sanctions for the many players who now come to LIV. Is Phil Mickelson right? Do you think that no LIV player wants a path back to the PGA Tour?
First of all, it feels like Phil is one of my friends that has a lot of time on their hands, that spends too much time on Facebook just shouting at other people. I don't really understand what exactly he's trying to gain by doing all of this on social media. But to answer your question, Damon, I've spoken to a number of LIV players who say exactly the opposite of what he said. Certainly I could see Phil or Dustin Johnson or Lee Westwood or a guy that's in their 40s, established player that doesn't need to play on the PGA Tour, not wanting to go back and be in that world again. But you can bet there are dozens of LIV players that would love to play PGA Tour designated events and PGA Tour events that are close to their communities that had something to do with long-term sponsorships that they had. They absolutely would love to do that again. Now, maybe they would also like to play LIV as well, but the idea that they don't want to go back to the PGA Tour, that's not what I'm hearing for a number of guys that are in their 20s and 30s that are playing on LIV.
But Todd, there are a lot of guys who aren't going to play the 3 weeks after Wyndham, not just the LIV guys, but a lot of guys who just simply aren't going to make that top 70. We've known that it was 70, 50, 30 for these three playoff events since the end of last year. Do you think at this point, now that the reality's here, that there's any kind of buyer's remorse out there where guys start to think, yeah, maybe that number's a little too low?
That's a good question. I do think that we might hear a little bit of that chirping after this event, the Wyndham Championship. But I do also think that if you want to be considered one of the best players, you have to be a consistent player. And that's what this FedEx Cup regular season is set up to do, and give yourself an opportunity to go into the FedEx Cup playoffs and then make that golden run and ultimately win the FedEx Cup. So, yeah, I think you might initially, if you think about it, dating back to 2007 when the FedEx Cup started, there's always been some griping and some chirping, some criticism, and there probably will be a little bit of that here over the next few weeks. But ultimately, after things settle down, I think the players and the fans especially will say, hey, this is pretty good having the top 70, the best of the best, compete in the FedEx Cup playoffs.
No shortage of things to chew on. That's the way we like it. Telu, Taylor, thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the week in the Carolinas.
Did Damon call us cynical?
That was the cat on my left.
Well, you proved my point.